Are you creatively constipated? Like, you have shit to make, but you just can't seem to squeeze it out? Yeah, us too.
Today on Honestly, Dear Listener, we're talking about how to get things moving again.
We're two childhood best friends talking about creative mindset.
I'm Emily Hatch.
And I'm Carrie Schaefer, and this is Honestly, Dear Listener.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo!
I had like a breakthrough a couple days ago.
Ooh, I want to know about it.
And by a couple days ago, I mean yesterday. But
Hmm.
it's been happening, I think, the last few days. And I was talking to Gemma,
Gemma, your
my
coach.
coach, yeah,
Yeah.
who was on a couple episodes ago. And we were like talking about what I'm doing. And I was telling her about a thing I went and sang at. And I realized, and I can't like go into it too much or I'll cry about it. But I was like, oh, I think I'm doing what I want to do.
Oh,
Like, I don't think I've ever felt like this before. That I'm like, oh, I don't need to like push harder. This is exactly what I'm wanting. Like,
yeah.
I've never felt like that. I always feel like, okay, I've got to like figure this out and get rid of this and make sure I do this. And like, but recently I was talking with her and she's like, isn't it crazy that like you're going to help a lot of people just being yourself?
Mm,
And I just
mm-hmm,
like
mm.
started crying and she started crying. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is
Mm-hmm.
what I've been wanting.
Now you just need to write that down somewhere and tack it in a place in your house where you look at it all the time and you don't forget, because it's really easy to forget that.
I wrote it in my morning pages, but I need to write it in a big place.
Nice.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. So I went there's a place down the street from where I live that has um like they have an artist night where they do like featured artist things, and then sometimes they have a band that comes in called Troublemakers that like plays for an open mic jam. So you can come sing, or you a lot of people did like slam poetry, and it was amazing. And then the band like backs them up, and then if you sing you can come back up the other vocalists. And um I sang and I was like, so it felt so good. And I feel like I also had a gig this past weekend with a disco band, which was really fun. Um, and it was like I forgot how much I really like singing. And I was like, oh, I love this so fucking much. Like this
Mm.
feeling. I don't,
Mhm.
it's not just singing to sing, you know? And I've said that before, but it was like, oh no, I for a while I thought maybe I just don't like singing anymore.
Mhm.
Um, but that's not true. I just like singing in certain places for certain people, the certain things I want. And what
Yeah.
happened there was like I met a bunch of artists that are amazing and are like messaging me, and we're following each other on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, I'm building a community of artists,
Yes.
like, which is what I want to do.
'Cause
Um,
we're all lonely,
we're
really.
lonely as fuck.
Yeah.
It is hard out here.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I was like, Gemma was like, it's pretty cool that what you're working on in your business, the top of the funnel, if you will, like in marketing, they say that, it's like a funnel, and the
Mhm.
top of the funnel is usually your like big thing that draws people in. And she's like, the top of your funnel is you just singing songs.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Like she's like, people just are like, I like that. I want to do that.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah. So it was a very special couple of days where I'm like, well, what came from the couple weeks before where I have had the hardest time ever?
Yep.
It feels like literally ever, perhaps. other than when I almost died in childbirth 20 years ago. Um, but it's like it birthed this.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It's like it's been growing in there, and it just was like the push and the pain and all this. And then the last couple of days, ah, I gave birth to this new life.
Yes.
What?
Oh, I
It's
love
deep.
that so
It's
much.
deep so quickly.
I love it. I'm so happy for you, friend. And that's huge that you're finding creative community because that is amazing and really hard to find for some reason, I
It's so
think.
true. I agree. I agree. And
Yeah.
even just, I think a reminder is there's stuff going on in our communities. Maybe, I mean, of course, in New York, there's a lot of stuff going on everywhere. But I think even in a big city like this, we can forget that people are making things and people are doing things, and you can be in that energy. And it's hard to remember sometimes that you could leave your house and
Mhm.
go be somewhere like that for a little while,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
You don't have to make everybody your best friend to enjoy the energy that is happening in your community. It is.
Right. Yes. That's true.
Even if you're in a small place.
I took a horror writing class the other day, and it was just I'd never done something like that, because I was raised the way we were raised, which for all of you that don't know, Emily and I were raised fundamentalist, evangelical Christianity, Pentecostal, all the things.
Mm.
And so it was
No
like very
snakes,
yeah, no snakes. We did not
mm,
do the whole
but
snake
everything else.
biting thing, but yeah, everything else we did. And, so and I was very much discouraged, from anything horror, anything at all. I remember it was like we had Fantasia,
Mm,
the Disney movie, and
mhm,
the part where Mickey is uh the wizard's apprentice or whatever it's
mhm.
called, where he's like do 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 with the wooden buckets pouring into the well, and then the brooms that anyway,
See, I've
hopefully.
never fully seen Fantasia. I've only seen parts of it because my parents wouldn't let me watch it, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we
Mhm.
had the VHS tape, but my mom recorded over all the witchcrafty parts. So it was like a home movie of my brother right in the middle of the movie. So I could never watch those parts until I was older, and then I
Mm,
YouTubed the shit out of those parts. Like, as, like, a 30-year-old woman, I'm all, "Yes!" Because all of these, like, scary, anything that was, like, not, like, pretty tame or
mhm,
overtly Christian was, like, shunned in our house.
mhm,
So, it was so interesting because I got into this horror writing class, and one of the first things that the instructor said is, "Okay, you don't have to apologize or preface the things you like." And I was like, "What do you
mm,
mean?" And she's like, "We're all into this genre, and we're so used to people on the outside being like, 'Oh, that might be weird.' So we feel like we have to, like, preface, 'Oh, this might be weird, but I'm really
mm,
into X, Y, and Z,' or whatever it is." And she's like, "We don't have to do this.
mm.
Don't do that in this class because we're all into it. We're all weird in our own
Fun.
sense." Yeah. And I was like, "What?" And it just felt like I got so much permission because I'm into writing creepy, horror-y type, dark, Neil Gaiman-esque type, dark and twisty things.
Mm,
And that's what's always been interesting to me. And it was something that I felt like I never could express
mm,
until I took this class, and then it was like, "Oh, no, here's all the permission that you need, girl. You're good." And not only are we gonna give you permission, we're gonna, like, celebrate that, and we're, like, right along with you. And it was so amazing. And then the instructor invited she was like, "I wanna get to know you more," basically, and so now we're, like, gonna meet for coffee, and I'm feeling like I have, like, creepy horror-y friends.
yay!
I know.
That's so
So,
fun.
Yeah, so I'm also feeling like, okay, some creative community, like getting into the writerly group of folks that like to talk about books and like to talk about craft and writing and all those things. So that's kind of what I'm riding high on this week is like, wow, okay, this is okay. I'm not weird. People might want to hang out. Neat.
Yeah.
So,
Yay.
yeah.
It's just so nice to be like, "Oh, there are more of us,"
Yeah.
you
Yes.
know?
Uh-huh.
And, like, witnessing other people's journeys and art, it's like it's just really special. It's really special.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
last night I had gone before to one of these, it's called The Moth, these,
Yes.
storytelling events, and, this was a story slam, they call it, so people just, like your name gets drawn, they say drawn out of the hat, but it's a bag, and, and she's like, "It's been this way for years, and we're not changing it. I'm gonna say the hat, but it's a bag." They draw names out, and then 10 people over the course of the night tell a 5-minute story on the topic that they assign, and, you don't know if you're gonna get to tell your story or not, and you don't know what order or anything, and then there are judges, and they give you scores, and whoever wins goes on to the grand slam. But just watching people, like, get up and tell this particular, um, night was about only in New York City, and it was just about, like, whatever weird, beautiful, gross, happy experiences you've had in New York, that you feel like would only happen in New York, and it was so fun. I love hearing people's stuff. It's so much fun.
Yes.
So,
I can't wait till and it's no pressure to you, but I can't wait till you're one of the people that are in the hat. I mean the bag,
I have
but
to
we'll say in the hat.
practice,
I know.
you know?
I know. Yep.
I but I also don't wanna give myself too much, because this is for all of us listeners. Um, I think about my students with how see, I'm special and I'm different than my students,
Oh,
but
okay.
really,
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
really not at all,
Mhm.
is the joke there. I'm like, "Don't practice yourself," or, like, say you have to okay, don't set up obstacles for yourself, like, "I can't do this until I do this."
Mhm.
Sure, you need to practice, sure, you need to have a plan, but overall, that is exactly the reason you don't go do things, is because you've given yourself a, "I have to look like this, I have to sound like this, I have to have this kind of song, I have to have practiced this many times in this place," and then you get that means you can't just go do something, because you have to give yourself 5 things that you have to make yourself do before you'll do that thing, and you won't even do the first one of those 5.
Yep.
So I'm aware that I may need to just do it. Um, but I prefer to go to a couple open mics first and
Yeah.
just tell some stories.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Love that.
Um, I look like the magic mirror from Snow White today.
Because you're like a
I'm just a
hanging
face.
face. Just for everyone that is not watching this, Emily is in front of a black background and she's wearing a black turtleneck. And so it kind of just looks like her face is sort of hanging there. I mean, I'm here for that energy.
It's pretty hilarious. Like, my hair is dark too, and I've got
Uh huh.
headphones on. Um, and the mic's black. I'm just like a, yep,
Mm
who's the fairest of them all? You are Bish. Um,
hmm.
Sorry, just interrupted myself to tell all of you that I look like the hanging mirror face.
I
Okay.
love it. Okay, so what are we talking about today, Emily? We are talking about okay, so Emily and I are about crotch deep into the artist's way.
Yeah,
Crotch deep?
crotch deep.
A little more than halfway is what that means. So
My
we're in
crotch is definitely less than halfway, but it's okay.
well,
Um,
not well, now I don't know.
I feel like
Okay,
our
fine.
waists are
Waist deep. But I just wanted to say crotch deep because, like, how often do you get to say that?
Crotch is a great word that I think we should say more
Crotch,
often. Crotch.
crotch, crotch. Ugh. It's something.
We're past crotch deep.
Yes, we are. We're past crotch deep. We're in week 7, recovering a sense of connection. If you don't know, Emily and I are facilitating a group class of The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity by Julia Cameron. Here's the front of the book.
For those of you
And
listening, it looks cool.
yes. Oh yeah. And she wrote it in the 80s. It's like kind of like the book if you're stuck creatively that people go to. So we're in week 7. It has this has been a doozy of a
Mm,
book so far. I
mhm,
mean, there have been weeks that I've been like, I hate this.
mhm,
I know it's good for me, but holy cow, this is the worst. This, however, week 7, I think has been the best so far. It has been like so much of what she talks about is a reframe. Like you grew up with thinking about yourself in these terms. Most of it is not very nice.
mhm,
Or you've been in a system where they've been like, okay, but this kind of art is okay, but this kind is not,
mhm,
or whatever it is. And she just she helps us reframe what, in fact, okay, so I'm going to do a quote here. This is out of week 7. Art is an act of tuning in and dropping down the well. It is as though all the stories, painting, music performances in the world live just under the surface of our normal consciousness. And all we really have to do once we realize that it's all right there. Like art and
mm,
creativity are not something you are straining on the toilet to pinch out of your body. It's literally allowing ourselves to relax down
mm,
into kind of the deepest part of our identity or being or knowing,
mm,
and allowing ourselves to just observe and play and record.
mhm,
And
mhm.
that's probably one of the most powerful reframes that I've had throughout this process.
Yeah, she even said that like Michelangelo that that uh our friend just released David from the stone that he
Mhm.
was in. And it's funny because Gemma said that, like, on the podcast when she was on the podcast, like, 3 weeks ago. She said the same
Synchronicity.
thing. Yeah, like and then I just think it's so interesting, and we've been talking, all of last season about the home is inside you the whole time,
Mhm.
and, like, it's just crazy how many times do we have to hear this shit before we're like, "Oh," but lately, at least for me, it's felt like, "Oh, it is in here." And then that,
Mhm.
like, ties all the way back into loving yourself and being kind and taking care of yourself because all of it is in us. We just
Yeah.
have to, like, yeah, um, take a look inside. So, there's an analogy I was saying also to Gemma, a couple days ago. It's like, to me, I feel like I've been swimming in the ocean, just being like, "The ocean, it's so hard. I just wanna, like, be a part of a community. And I'm realizing that there's so it the vulnerability of being in the ocean, once you realize that you are inside a whole 'nother world, that all
Mhm.
of like, you just have to put your face down and look and you're a part of that. But so much of the time you're just struggling and being like, all I want to do is just see some sea creatures and I'm tired and I'm like and you're like, "Oh, I'm in this right now." I
Right.
got and it feels like I've just been in a swimming pool for a long time being like, "I
Mhm.
should be in the ocean." not
Mhm.
realizing, like, I am in there.
Right.
And yes, there's scary stuff around, but there's beauty and all of that. All of the creativity that I've been excited about is living right here. I just
Yep.
have to, like, realize it and put my face in the water and I can see it. You know?
Right.
It's another analogy of that. It's like you are this.
Mhm.
You're inside it. You're a part of it.
Right. Well,
It's
and
crazy.
I feel like we've been taught for so long that you have to you have to you're not enough how you are right now.
Mm,
You need to get to a different state, and whether that's through God or whether that's, you whatever it is, you you need something else to kind of like help you get to a place where you can make things, but realizing I already have everything I need
mm,
inside of me. And yeah, there's education. Yeah, we can take classes, we can improve on our craft, but I'm not talking about necessarily that. I'm talking about the dropping down the well,
mm.
the capacity to enter the other world.
Yeah, what does that look like to you, like, dropping down the well? Will you tell me what that means to you? Like, what do you see when you
Yeah.
think about that?
Uh-huh. Well, I wrote about this a little bit in my morning pages where,
Mm,
in fact, because my son and I were talking about, cuz he's enamored of anything that has to do with water. And so we were talking about wells, and he's like, "Well, what if we came across a well and we fell in?" And I was like, "Well, you could die down there. They're pretty dangerous. Like there's not a whole lot of oxygen down at the bottom, so you might asphyxiate and all this stuff." So I was like, "Stay away from wells." But in this analogy, I think about it as like it's kind of it's just the opposite. It is like getting in this way, it's almost like the doorway to another world
mm,
that everyone's kind of been like, stay away from it my whole life. When
mm.
really, like, that is where it is all at.
The
So,
source,
the
kind of.
source,
Mm,
yes, and everyone's afraid because, yeah, dropping down the well feels a little bit like eating the fruit, a little. And why
mhm.
I am making a direct connection to Genesis and the Bible and the Adam and Eve story, by the way, where it's almost, and it's interesting too, and I'm gonna get back to the well, but go here with me. But, like,
I'm coming.
when they say in the Genesis story, eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil,
Mhm.
like, that hit me the other day, like, wait a minute. Like, they didn't have the knowledge of what was good and what was evil before that? Like, you don't
Mm.
have story if you don't have the knowledge of good and evil. You don't
That's
have the
true.
capacity to tell or to appreciate stories because you have to have conflict in stories. You have to have it or you don't have a story.
Mm,
And so, what do you have if you don't have that knowledge? You're very innocent, maybe two dimensional.
mm,
Um, Definitely not. I mean, you're not able to fully appreciate what a story is. And so, almost in a way for me, the well is a little like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
mm,
Whereas like you were saying with your ocean analogy, it might not always be super safe. But at
mhm.
the same time, like, what are you gonna do? Sit in your fisherman shack by the ocean and never leave and fish all day and, like, have this, like, kind of, like, humdrum life where when you maybe could have chosen to risk it all and see beauty and see pain, but also get to see, like, wonder and creativity and, like, to be an artist, you risk.
Mm,
And so anyway, dropping down the well for me has several of those connotations. It's not the safest thing you could do.
mhm.
You are risking, but you're dropping down into a world where anything is possible. And you're also At the same time you're dropping down into a whole world, you're dropping down into the deepest parts of your identity at the same time.
Mm,
Your
mhm,
core from which everything emanates. Because isn't that what creativity is? Is like
mm,
telling the truth?
mm,
All we're getting at in doing this is the truth. And so, and just like she says in the book here, it's almost like a river that flows at the bottom, and you're dropping down into that. And at the bottom of the well, you're like sticking your feet in,
mm.
and you're getting to taste because you taste with your feet, duh.
Yeah, yeah, don't it doesn't everybody?
I'm mixing metaphors here, just stay with me. You're you're getting to be a part of, because that water flows in that underground system, and it
Mhm,
flows between artists, and it flows between, different people, different ideas, different ways of being.
mm,
And so in that way, like we've talked about with the electricity conduit, we're adding ourselves to the system, the system and the flow of creativity that exists everywhere.
yeah,
So
that you
that's kind of what I see when she talks about dropping down the well.
I love that there's a connection there because a well sounds, like, really lonely,
Mhm.
doesn't it? And you're just in, like, a dark place and you don't know what's gonna happen, but you really are part of that bigger system
Mhm.
there, and I like the part where she said that you're the instrument, not the author.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
that also takes so much pressure off. It's
Yes.
like, it's not on me, I'm just here, like, experiencing this energy and feeling and allowing it to flow through me, you know? Um, I love that. That's the conduit idea too,
Yep.
you know? Um, but yeah, it's I love that. The well thing also, speaking of tons of metaphors, reminds me of, like, Alice in Wonderland, you know,
Mhm.
and just, like,
Yes.
falling down the rabbit hole, you know?
Yes.
That that's where all
Absolutely.
the joy is
Yeah.
and
And I
weirdness.
I love that it's a little dangerous almost, you know?
Mhm.
It's almost like, how in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the children are talking to the beaver family about Aslan, and they're asking what he's like, and they're like, "Oh, he's a lion? Is he safe?" And
Mm,
the Mr. Beaver's like, "Safe? Of course he's not safe, but he's
mm,
good."
mm,
And I think, excuse the overt, uh, connection to Jesus there, as a Jesus character. I don't mean it like that, but I mean it in the way of, something can be risky and maybe not safe, but also good and
mm,
healthy
mhm.
and right, whatever that means, and good.
I love that. That's
Yeah,
so but he's good.
but he's good.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, here she says, "We are the instrument more than the author of our work." Boy, does that just take that takes so much of the pressure off, but that also, I feel like there goes your ego, right? Which I feel like
Mhm.
my ego feeds directly into my perfectionism,
Mhm.
and that holds me back a lot instead of being like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, dude. It's not for your glory. It's so that you get to be a part of the river, the conduit, the stream." And
Mhm.
that in itself is worth it.
You know, it's interesting because I think the concept of ego has always been strange for me because I when I was younger, I kind of always thought about ego being like you think a lot of yourself,
Mhm.
you know? Um and but the more I learn about ego, the more I learn that it's just the sense of self being in a displaced location, you know?
Mhm.
Because I like when I was listening to I forget what she said in the book 'cause I don't have it with me. You're so good. But like she was talking about perfectionism and the ego of all
Mm,
of it, but it being more like a fear-based thing rather than a like, "I think I'm great," or "It's all for me." Um,
right.
she framed it, and I've heard this a couple times recently, and it's really been hitting me, more like the fear of not doing well is and, like, needing it to be perfect means you're not gonna do it, but that is an ego issue,
Mm,
and I was like, "Oh, so it's ego doesn't have to mean you think you're the shit and you're doing everything because you think you're the shit. It can be that you are deathly terrified of ruining something that could be really beautiful if you didn't touch it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
mhm.
and that is ego too. Thinking that it has anything to really do with you and that you could fuck it up. That's
Right.
ego too. And not in a shame way, but in like a, if you just allow and you're
Mhm.
like, "This is what I mean, what I'm hearing or what I'm feeling and I'm making, and I'm a part of this thing," then you don't have room to be like, "I'm responsible
Right.
for this,"
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So, I just thought that hit me pretty hard. It was like, "Oh, ego is what scares us
Mhm.
too."
Yeah. If we if we are kind and loving to ourselves and have a kind and gentle relationship with who we are, we don't need ego. I honestly believe. And I remember being younger and feeling so insecure and feeling just like I don't know what my place is in all of this, and like really self-flagellating to get myself to do a good job on something. Oh, you can't have people know that you're a failure or anything, so you need to sing this solo really, really well.
Mhm.
And so in that way, almost like building up my ego as a fortress around my fear and insecurity to kind of
Mm.
insulate me from
Mhm.
feeling,
Mhm.
and and really insulating me from other people too. Um which is the opposite of creative connection and is
Mhm.
so lonely. And the older I get, the more I feel like I don't want to do that, and I feel like I don't need to do that because I'm building something better than that. It's relationship with who I am and talking gently and knowing that worth isn't on the table. And I'm not super good at that yet, but it's a process.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
definitely, yeah. Okay, so she writes here, I think this is what you were talking about. The
Thanks.
perfectionist writes, paints, creates with one eye on her audience. Boy, did that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, even when I'm writing my story, like, I want the writing process to be about me and play and
Mhm.
joy. And like, what would just tickle my pants off of me right now? That's what I want it to be about when I'm making these stories. I don't want, I don't want to be thinking about like, and I'll be like writing my book and be like, oh, I wonder if I could, we could do this at my book signing party. And I'm like, whoa, dude, whoa. And it's not bad to dream. I don't think that there's
No.
anything wrong with it. But like I feel like when I do that, when I think about my audience or kind of the business of books
Mhm.
when I'm writing, it like siphons some of that joy away from the work and the play of what I'm doing.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I th like, well, one of the things she says in that section too is, like, the editor and the critic are in the room with
Mhm.
you, so, like, the similar thing where, like, your eyes on your audience while you're doing your thing, that means you can't truly be, like, tapped in
Yeah.
because you're constantly like, "Well, what are they gonna think?" So,
Uh-huh.
you aren't free to make something.
Right.
I always like to think of it like we could leave those guys out of this
Yeah.
entirely, not the editor, but they don't belong there when you're playing and making things, you know?
Mhm.
So if you have I was walking down the street when I was listening to the book, and when she said that, one eye on the audience, I went, "Ugh," out loud. Became, like, aware of that. I was like, "Oh, whoops." Yeah, that hit home for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And I think I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but in Stephen King's excellent book on writing entitled On Writing, he talks about that there are two different processes to writing. The first process is the studio door is closed, your writing room door is closed. It is
Mhm,
you and that story and no one else. And it is playtime and it is joy and it is all the places you ever wanted to go, but with yourself and yourself only. It is joy, right?
mm,
And at some point that has to come to an end, and then you open your writing room door, and now it becomes about the editor. It becomes about the business of books. So you're letting the world come in, and you can control how fast that is, if it's one person or a lot of people. But that's when the critic can, in a healthy way, come in and talk to you about what you've made.
mhm,
But that critic is not allowed in the room, and the business of books, or the business of whatever business you're in, if you're in a creative business, that they are not allowed in that room when that door is closed. The
mhm,
creation of the thing is sacred, holy work.
mhm,
And so I loved that distinction. Like there is a place for the critic as long as the critic is constructive and helpful,
mhm.
but it is not in that first stage of the process.
Nope, you can't continue to be like, "Hey, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this
Right.
okay?" Like, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Um she also says in this, when she's talking about perfectionism and ego, um to the perfectionist, there is always room for improvement. The perfectionist calls this humility. In reality, it is egotism. It is pride that makes us want to write a perfect script, paint a perfect painting, perform a perfect audition monologue. Perfectionism is not a quest for the best, it is the pursuit of the worst in ourselves. The part that tells us that nothing we will the part that tells us that nothing we do will ever be good enough, that we should try again.
That was my other groan.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yep. I mean,
It's the pursuit in the worst of the worst
yes.
of ourselves. I was
Yes.
like, "Oh, no. Oh, that is so true." And then it made me feel really bad for myself
Yeah.
that, like, I've just been like, "Well, how bad do you suck? Let's get as deep into your suckery as we possibly can."
Yep.
Like, how sad. No wonder I haven't really wanted to make stuff for a long time 'cause
Right.
I'm not safe.
Ooh, ooh. I'm not safe.
'Cause it's like, "Oh, look at that." As soon as
Uh-huh.
you tried that, you idiot." Like, "Whoa."
Right. So that's like asking our creative self to take a double risk, because falling down the well, there's risk in that, involved in that. But there's a double risk because we're not even safe with ourselves
Mm-mm.
to begin with.
The monster at the bottom of the well is me. Ah.
Yeah, totally. Um, yeah, and I don't know about you, but when I sit down to write something, I want it to be like my magnum opus. Everything
Mm,
I do, I'm like, this has to be the thing that I am known for. And I put so much weight on it that then if the first attempt or whatever doesn't measure up to the weight that I'm putting on it, which it rarely does because most of the time they're shitty first drafts,
mhm.
then I'm like, "Oh, I'd rather not do it than to risk my magnum opus being shitty."
Or
and we just
mediocre.
don't do it.
Mhm. I have a student right now that I'm working with who I've worked with her for as a singer for God, probably 7 years, maybe 8. And she's finally letting herself start writing a song.
Yes.
But she is trying so hard to have me let her off the hook. And it's the same thing. She's like, I just want this is so trite. I want it to be special and important and perfect. And so she wouldn't even let herself write for like 2 weeks. She was just like, I can't because it's all garbage. And of course, I can clearly see out here
Right.
looking at her that all you're doing is limiting yourself. Just write anything, write shit.
Yep.
But when it comes to me, on the other hand, like
Right.
it's
Well,
different.
we're special.
Yes. And thankfully, because I do this work with people all the time, I think I catch it. But then there are times where I'm like, oh, I've been doing this to myself for years in
Yes.
just a different way that is not as overt.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, I've made a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of stuff. So I'm doing fine. But really, there are so many things that I'm like, maybe I just don't like that. Like, no, you're just really afraid that you're going to make something bad
Mhm.
and that people will think you're dumb.
Yeah. Well, and we have to. I can't remember who said it. I'm sure this is just a saying that people say, but you have to have the shit at the beginning or
Mhm.
somewhere along the way. What Because you use that as fertilizer for
Mm.
the things that end up growing into beautiful things.
Mhm.
If you don't have the shit first, you don't have the fertilizer. You have nothing to grow your cool stuff in.
I love that. You know what? It's funny because I've always kind of thought of it like I get mad when I hear people say like the first stuff you do is going to be bad because I'm like, well, then I don't want to start because how many things am I going to get through or like but that are terrible? How long is it going to take?
Mm,
Or what if I'm like I'm writing this show right now? What if I write a horrible show and I know it's going to be going up somewhere, right? And I like the idea that it just dawned on me. It's not the project is shit. It's the first time you do the thing you're doing, but you keep doing it. And not, I know this sounds really crazy, but it doesn't sound crazy. That was mean. I always regarded it as the song you wrote sucks. The next song you write will be better.
mm,
So therefore, it's like the first book you write will be bad. The
mhm,
next book will be better. So, or the first show, whatever. It just dawned on me that it's a first draft,
mhm.
not whatever you start is going to suck
Right.
like permanently for you.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
oh, thank God. Cause I've been like, why are we signing off on just like everything we do for however long sucking? No,
Right.
no. It's that when you first start, that's not the finished product.
Right.
Like, to, uh, it was Michelangelo. It was David.
Yeah.
Okay. God, I keep like getting confused today for some reason. But he didn't like chisel one chunk off and he's like, this doesn't look like a naked dude. And he gives up.
Right.
Like,
Totally.
you know,
Yeah. Yep.
I just want
Well,
to make a
and
naked dude and this doesn't look anything like one.
totally. Yeah, we have to have the shitty first draft
Mhm.
or whatever it is, whatever your equivalent is in your medium.
Mhm.
So,
Oh, that makes me feel better.
yeah, totally. Uh but yeah, and you said earlier you were like how many times are we going to hear this before it really sinks in? I'm right there with you because I feel like I've read about this stuff for years and I feel like it's just now starting to trickle in. Like it's
Mm.
just now starting to have any kind of traction. And it's so annoying to be human like that.
Yeah, dude. It sucks.
Like why are we like this? I wish I could have just learned all my lessons in my 20s. So by the time my 30s came around, I'm like, I am good to go.
Yeah, I recently, I think I said to you while we were just chatting, it was like, "Why am I 40 doing this work?" And you were like, "Some people never do this work." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "That's true, but also
Yeah.
40? Come on. It's only now starting to sort of make sense, and I only feel clarity like once every 3 weeks. This is not fair."
Yes, that's the other thing. Is like just when I get into a good state of mind, then I go to sleep and I wake up and I'm like this whole different other sad person. And I'm like, "Well,
Mhm.
what happened today? Did the pressure drop or something? Like, what is why? Why am I like this?"
Yeah. It's so good to know that we're not alone. Or like
Yes.
we could be nuts, but we're like similar types.
Yeah.
You know what I
We'll
mean?
be
Like that
nuts
feels really
together.
good. That feels really good to know. Um
Dear listener,
if
if you relate to any of this, please, please just know that there are at least two other people out in the world that are as weird as you. I mean, given statistics, there are probably a lot more, but we can guarantee at least two
cuz
are
we're right
like you.
here.
Yeah.
Yep. And the last thing that I wanted to say is that like I've been living in a place where I'm like just do it anyway. And
Mhm.
sometimes it feels like squeezing the turd out on the toilet, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and I think there's value in that. And I think being
Mm.
like, come on, let's go. There's value in that. And sometimes we need that energy. But lately I've been like really burnt out on just doing it anyway,
Mhm.
feeling like I'm not doing my best work that way. I'm tired. I can't figure out which things anymore I really wanted to do or didn't want to do. And I think the thing that has brought a lot of clarity has been this beating me over the head with it's in there already. What feels good?
Mm.
Like you can be happy and find that inside yourself. And coming back to that makes me feel so much less like I have to beat myself over the head in order to do it.
Yep.
Like I'm just what's happened is I'm just sick of shitting. I'm like I see the toilet and I'm like, "Ugh, no." You know?
Uh-huh.
Not that my art is shitting, but I kind of like that analogy.
Feels
Um
good.
yeah, it's like I could just be like my body will do this. I'm listening. And then when I
Mhm.
have to go, I go because I have to.
Yeah.
Rather than sitting down and being like, "You better squeeze something out. This is gonna hurt." You
Right.
know?
Exactly. See,
So
yeah, the
if we're
metaphor
not feeling
works.
creative, it's not like you would just have to wait for the spirit to move you. You do have to do something.
Right.
You have to dive deeper inside yourself to figure that out.
Mhm. Well, and I mean, if we're talking about, well, what does that mean practically? Morning pages is a great place to start. What I mean by morning pages, this is a straight from The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, the book. It is 3 handwritten or equivalent typed pages of whatever you want to write about. Could be stream of consciousness, it could be whatever. Get your shit out on the page. And that really does help to, I mean, if you're feeling like, man, I am squeezing on the toilet trying to get art out of me. Morning pages are a great way to starting they're a great place to help you start the flow,
Yeah,
if
it's
you will.
like a little it's a little enema.
Yeah. Great.
You know, we've had a really great episode, I think.
Yeah.
If I may say so ourselves. No, that's not.
No, we
But
can. We are.
not to toot our horn, but doodly fucking do. And I'm glad that we're ending it with a shitting analogy.
Me too. So classy.
So classy. Always, really.
Really.
We put the ass in class.
Yes, we do. Well, dear listener, thank you for getting down and dirty with us this week. Until next week, dear listener.
Bye bye.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo!